After this bout of confrontation, it was already daybreak and the rain was gradually weakening. Water droplets fell from the leaves, and along with them fell a dark blue feather. Wei Wuxian raised his hand to catch it and found a thin layer of red glow lingering on it. Lan Wangji glanced over, reached out to stop Wei Wuxian, who was about to continue the pursuit, pinned the feather in his hair, and looking at the vast sky whispered, "The bone bird, not a malevolent spirit." "Huh? What bird?" Wei Wuxian punched the tree in frustration. "Why didn't you let me chase after it? Just let it run off like that? I feel like I'm regressing in life. Now even a lousy bird can easily slander me." "Wei Ying." Lan Wangji took down the wine flask hanging from Wei Wuxian's waist, unscrewed the stopper, and waved it gently, signaling him to be patient. The scent of wine was carried by the wind into the forest. Soon the sound of a zither came from the horizon. The big bird flapped its wings and turned back, following the fragrance. It didn't seem afraid of Lan Wangji, standing on his palm and dipping its long beak into the wine flask. Only then did Wei Wuxian see the bird clearly. On its head was a tuft of dark red feathers, funny and cute. This bird truly had no evil aura, but instead exuded a gentle spiritual energy. So this bird was a spiritual bird. The next second, Wei Wuxian reached out to touch its wing, grinning mischievously. "Although it's not an evil spirit, since it picks a fight with me, just watch me pluck all its feathers." "Wei Ying." Lan Wangji stopped him in time. The bird, startled, gave a clear cry and flew away with flapping wings. "Lan Zhan, why did you let it run again?" Wei Wuxian pouted, somewhat displeased. "Why didn't you let me teach it a lesson? Do you know why it took my form? And why it chanted your family's tune?" "Huh? Where are you taking me?" Lan Wangji suddenly wrapped his arms around him at the waist and flew away, stepping on his sword. Raindrops dripped from the eaves, splashing on the carved railings. Wei Wuxian soaked in a bath, gazing outside at a peony tree in full bloom. The incense curled softly. Steam rose gently, and the person before the window was more fragrant than the flowers. He felt drowsy. Lan Wangji stood tall by the window, staring at the peony tree for a long time. Just as Wei Wuxian was about to close his eyes, Lan Wangji suddenly turned around and tilted his chin to kiss him. Lan Wangji's kisses were usually assertive, but this time it was unusually gentle, full of tenderness. Wei Wuxian's skin, softened by the hot bath, felt it melting from the inside out with Lan Wangji's affectionate kiss. Lan Wangji's eyes were moist, staring at him intensely and passionately. Wei Wuxian could fight off 10,000 ghosts, but was powerless against Lan Wangji's soul-stunning gaze. Unconsciously, he felt moved, not even knowing how charming and alluring his expression had become. Lan Wangji's elegant fingers stroked his long eyebrows near the temples. Wei Wuxian pushed up his forehead ribbon, lips close to Lan Wangji's, and softly breathed, "Ergege, why did you bring me here?" Lan Wangji gently pecked him once, his thumb twisting on Wei Wuxian's lips. His breath grew heavier, but his tone was more tender and flirtatious. "Don't you remember this place?" "How could I forget?" Wei Wuxian lightly bit Lan Wangji's Adam's apple, glanced through the rain veil at the window, recalling how they met when they were young. He held a cup of wine leaning against the building, flowers blooming as brilliantly as now. Lan Wangji in white looked as though he had come from the heavens. Wei Wuxian swirled the wine in his cup and instinctively threw a peony flower into it. Back then, the flower was thrown from the terrace. He had wanted to invite Lan Wangji up for a drink, but they ended up arguing again and parted unhappily. That flower was thrown by me. Wei Wuxian sucked on his cheek and looked at Lan Wangji with a smile. Not a female ghost. "I know." Lan Wangji's gaze grew more affectionate, burning his cheeks red. He took Wei Wuxian's hand, kissed his palm lightly, then pulled the damp man close and cradled him horizontally onto the bed. The elegant curtains hung down to the ground. Wei Wuxian sank into the soft quilt with both hands controlled above his head by Lan Wangji. Lan Wangji's gaze was deep, having waited 13 years longingly, brewing a fiery wine that burned to the bone. With one look, he intoxicated the usually unyielding Wei Wuxian. "Han Guangjun, the sky is still bright." Strictly speaking, it had only just gotten brighter. Though Wei Wuxian reminded him with words, the changes beneath him showed his inner tide had already broken loose. The sound of rain was drizzling, and even their breaths became damp and messy. So what? Lan Wangji's scattered, burning kisses fell on Wei Wuxian's neck, and he too was overwhelmed. No big deal. Wei Wuxian struggled hard, pulling the quilt over them both, his crisp voice drifting up. Now it's dark. Hearing Lan Wangji's faint laughter, Wei Wuxian grunted softly. Two great waves collided, tumultuous and dizzying, blurring past and present. Only deep love, vast as the sea, swallowed them whole. Wei Wuxian felt Lan Wangji was gentler than ever, but hotter than before. Soon he succumbed, no longer knowing if he was in the clouds or water. He unusually remained silent, closing his eyes and devoting himself to this romantic moment. The rain had not stopped. Lan Wangji lay on the bed with him, listening to the rain. Their long hair intertwined. Wei Wuxian nestled in his arm, unusually obedient, a hint of fatigue showing between his brows. Tired? Lan Wangji brushed his hair gently, incredibly tender and doting. I should be the one asking you. So, are you tired? Ergege, your face is flushed, which means you are not tired yet. He nuzzled closer into Lan Wangji's embrace, tightening his hold. His voice was slightly hoarse. Lan Zhan, I remember now. The bone bird is the so-called thief of love mentioned in ancient texts. It can transform into someone like me. Do you have something you want to say to me? Lan Wangji's hand stroking his arm suddenly stopped. After a long silence, he looked at the person in his arms, bowed his head, and gently kissed his forehead, but ultimately said nothing. After hearing about the death of the Yiling Patriarch, Lan Wangji once dragged his injured body to the burial mound. No one knew what he did there. When he returned, his back was covered with red marks from whip wounds, and his fingers were bruised all over. He carried the feverish, unconscious child down from the burial mound, passing through Yiling Street and looking at the old buildings. All had changed. Nostalgic and sorrowful, Lan Wangji ascended the tower, walked to the window, but the once vibrant smiles were nowhere to be found. Only a peony tree, still blooming as before. It was also a rainy day, with a chaotic noise around. The rain curtain, however, separated him from the vast world, enclosing him in a past dream. The red flowers bloomed on the old branches. The whole building was shrouded in misty, gloomy rain. Leaning on the railing, feeling melancholy, who would understand? Tears involuntarily welled and fell. Unsure if it was rain or tears blurring his vision, he saw through the haze a dark blue bird perched on a branch, half closing its black eyes while playing among the flowers. The child slept deeply on the couch. Lan Wangji poured a cup of wine, placed it on the table, and lightly plucked the strings of the guqin with his bruised fingers. The icy string emitted a husky sound. Lan Wangji's pain found no solace in words and was only poured into the strings. There was no sheet music. He played according to his feelings, making the tone increasingly lonely and melancholy. After a sorrowful tune, the bird suddenly flammed its wings and flew in, its sharp claws pressing the vibrating strings. It shook its head as if accusing the music of being too sad, disrupting its flower play. The blue bird fixed its gaze on Lan Wangji, then dived toward the wine on the table. After finishing the wine and shaking its feathers, it rolled 3 times on Wangji guqin. The amusing scene suddenly reminded Lan Wangji of someone. That person was heroic and handsome, smiling as he handed over a jar of wine. The Emperor's smile. Here's a jar for you. Just pretend you didn't see me, okay? If he truly hadn't seen it back then, he wouldn't have suffered this calamity. Lan Wangji lifted the bird and gently stroked its head with his thumb. The blood on his fingers was still fresh, leaving a red mark on the bird's feathers right at its crown. Lan Wangji stood and walked to the window, plucked a red peony branch, lowered his eyes, and tucked it among the bird's wings. The bird's eyes flicked, then it spread its wings and flew into the dark clouds. Han Guangjun had read many scriptures and identified this as a bone bird. The bone bird was not an evil spirit, but a kind of spirit creature. As its name suggested, it had no flesh or feathers. Ancient texts said it fed on human love and was also called a thief of love. Whenever touched by worldly emotions, a strand of feathers grew on its bones. Legend said it was born unable to cry, but would forever use the one sound that deeply touched it as its voice. It could also steal the thoughts in a person's heart when they suffered profound pain and sorrow. Once triggered, it transformed into the shape of what the heart most desired and never changed. Legend also said it could communicate with the underworld and served as a messenger between the living and the dead, able to speak with souls. Ancient texts recorded that centuries ago, cultivators once used it to communicate with spirits in night hunt. When Lan Wangji stuck the flower into the bird's feathers, his thoughts were unspoken but clear. Though Lan Wangji never mentioned it, Wei Wuxian, recalling the old immortal legends, roughly understood. He knew this seemingly aloof person had deep love like an abyss, but he kept everything inside, never uttering a word. Feeling a mix of emotions, Wei Wuxian suddenly hugged him and tenderly kissed his eyelids. The night hunting experience he thought was a mere adventure was actually Lan Wangji's deep love engraved in bone. Lan Zhan, Wei Wuxian whispered lovingly and kissed his chest. He pressed his ear against him. I heard everything. Lan Wangji's emotions were suddenly stirred. He turned over and wrapped them both under the quilt again. Night fell again. They didn't light candles, and in the pure darkness they felt each other's fierce gazes and damp breaths. Outside, the wind stopped, the rain ceased, and the bright moon revealed half its face. Exhausted, the two embraced and fell asleep. At that moment, a large dark blue bird quietly entered the room, carrying a red flower that had not withered after 13 years, placing it on the strings.